The Bay St. Louis train depot was built in 1927 and sits in a park-like setting in beautiful Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. The building is a missionary architectural style and is listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The original depot was built in 1876 as a stop on the L&L Railroad line that ran from Mobile to New Orleans and is now home to the Hancock County Tourism Development Bureau, hosting festivals on the park grounds and private parties within the complex. The Bay St. Louis train depot holds a rich history of memorable stories from its local residents and visitors. Bay St. Louis, Mississippi is the third oldest city on the Gulf of Mexico. It sits along a string of coastal communities along the beautiful beaches of Mississippi. It's an artsy, quaint town with much influence from its seasonal second home residents from New Orleans. The town lies just west of the Bay of St. Louis, which must be crossed by car bridge or rail bridge to continue travel along the coast. The rail bridge, which has been destroyed several times due to hurricane, is 2 miles long across the bay. The Bay of St. Louis, along with other waterways and marshes along the coast, made the original 140 miles of rail lines from Mobile to New Orleans quite the constructional challenge, even referred to as the railroad that walks on water. Nevertheless, the railroad was up for the challenge. Construction began in 1867 and completed in 1870. The Louisville and Nashville rail lines opened the original Bay St. Louis depot for business in 1876. This building functioned as a major transportation hub between New Orleans and Bay St. Louis. Starting at the Canal Station in New Orleans, other popular watering holes from the New Orleans to Mobile line included the town of Wayland, Gulfport Station, the Biloxi Depot, the town of Ocean Springs, the Pascagoula Depot, and finally arriving into the Mobile, Alabama station. The Bay St. Louis train depot was a stopping or starting point for all railroad transport for many city commuters, along with transporting goods, day workers, and families for weekend outings. Listed fares in 1871 per round trip from New Orleans to Bay St. Louis was $2.25. Schedules were regularly posted and distributed throughout the coastal communities. It's recorded that racing pigeons were delivered regularly to the depot by train from New Orleans. Vendors hawked fried oysters, pralines, and sandwiches.
People used to take the train from New Orleans to Bay St. Louis. It was their vacation homes from New Orleans and back and forth.
Okay, my name is Dottie Powell, and when I was about 4 or 5 years old, we used to take the train from New Orleans to Bay St. Louis, and then my grandparents would pick us up and bring us back home.
And
that was an outing.
It was just for a visit?
No, just an outing.
Just for the
something
day.
different for us to, take a ride on the train.
Do you happen to remember?
And Mr. Fayard, who was a cab driver, would pick us up at the depot, the old depot here, and drive us to our house on Washington Street. And there, he would, after the weekend would pass, he would come and pick us up because we had no telephone service at all. And he would pick us up and bring us over to the depot to catch a train to go back to New Orleans and work. And my father even hauled eggs from the chickens he raised over here into New Orleans and sold them.
One local resident wrote that in 1919, the railroad depot was the center of activity for the town. He met the trains to buy the Saturday Evening Post. He explained that in summer, a train ride was a dusty and dirty ordeal. There were no fans, no air conditioning, and one would arrive at destination dirty and sweaty, and smoked up from the belching smoke from the locomotive pulling the train. Segregation was a part of daily life in the South in the early 1900s, and the railroads were no exception. The Daily Picayune reported on November 5, 1904, the rules as dictated by the Mississippi Railroad Commission. It is ordered that all railroads operating in the state of Mississippi shall provide 2 or more passenger cars for each passenger train, or shall divide the passenger cars by a partition to secure separate accommodations for the white and colored races as provided by law. And every railroad passenger conductor shall assign each passenger to the car, or the compartment of the car used for the race to which the passenger belongs. And he shall not permit either race to unnecessarily pass through the cars or compartment provided for the other, nor permit either in any case to use the toilets or closets provided for the other. Every breach of this rule shall be construed as a willful violation thereof and punishable as such. Blacks had to actually buy their tickets?
On the other side, yes. And they would sit on that side and wait for the train, and then this side was the white people.
Had a waiting room
Really? By 1926, the Chamber of Commerce and the L&L Railroad were in negotiations to replace the aging depot. Before action could be taken, however, the older wooden structure was destroyed by fire in 1928. Its replacement, an 8,000 square foot mission-style building, was completed and dedicated on April 20, 1929. Per the National Registry, the building is a Spanish colonial revival style, a two-story, 5x3 bay main block with a 3-bay addition to the north side. Shaped parapet roofline, central entrance with sidelights, and an OG arch transform. Entry portal is pilastered, recessed, and decorated. Windows include pairs round-headed and arched in groups of 3. The beautiful new depot building was now the pride and delight of the Bay St. Louis community, continually bringing in visitors and providing New Orleans businessmen transport to and from their homes on the coast. The Bay St. Louis Depot has been the backdrop of several famous people and events. The actress Sandra Bernhardt once found herself stuck in Bay St. Louis after her train had a problem with one of its wheels. She apparently made quite the fuss over her delays, exasperating in French, which was quite well understood by the Creole natives. Famous author Maurice Thompson happened to also be on the same troubled train as Sarah Bernhardt, but in contrast, was so pleased with the town that he canceled his plans and remained in Bay St. Louis for the summer with his family and returned for many years thereafter. It was in Bay St. Louis that he wrote King of Honey Island, with scenes laid out in Bay St. Louis. A most significant local event occurred at the depot in 1965, when the movie, This Property is Condemned, was filmed using the depot and surrounding areas as the main stage for the movie. The movie starred Natalie Wood, Robert Redford, Charles Bronson, and Alan Baxter, and was directed by Sidney Pollack.
My name is Eddie Coleman, and I work here at the Hancock County Historical Society. And the train depot is quite historic, but it's also been used as a backdrop in a movie. It was the backdrop in This Property is Condemned, starring Robert Redford and Natalie Wood, filmed back in 1965 and then came out in 1966. And right across the street from the depot is the Bay St. Louis Little Theater, which was referred to as the Scafidi House, which was used as one of the sets in This Property is Condemned. It was referred to as the Star Boarding House.
Shortly after the movie was filmed in the 60s, the daily commuter service was discontinued as the automobile had become the major source of transportation even in Bay St. Louis. Freight service continued, but sadly regular passenger service did not begin again until the 1990s. In 1991, the city began a redevelopment of the Depot District when the city purchased the property from CSX. The restorations of the historic L&L train depot and grounds were completed in 1996. Amtrak began regular stops again in 1993, but these were halted in 2005 with the devastation of the rail lines by Hurricane Katrina. The city made its final restorations from Katrina damage in 2008, and the restored building now hosts the Hancock County Tourism and Development Bureau and the official visitor center. The Hancock County Train Depot continues as a monument to the legacy of daily life and major transportation from the late 1800s and first half of the 1900s. Every resident from these times has a story to share about the depot, whether it's about work, vacation, or entertainment. The restored building and grounds continue to function as a source of community gatherings to the Bay St. Louis residents. And walking inside the restored depot today is like getting a glimpse of the history of this quaint coastal community.